the souls are massive, right? And the puddles on the floor, things like that, are all different constructs. It's just, I just said constructs stacked on God's shelves, but this is the best image that I could share to illustrate that, which what I was showing. Now, what exists outside of all of this, you could say this space is the void, the black space, right? And the void, the black space is you could say the beginning of all things, if there ever was a beginning, but it's the point where all things are created from.
I'd like to welcome to the show Darius J. Wright. How you doing, Darius?
How you doing? It's nice to be here, man.
Thank you so much for coming on the show, man. You are one of those guests that my audience has been saying, man, you gotta get Darius on your show. You gotta get Darius on your show. You gotta get Darius on your show. So I reached out, and here you are, my friend. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yeah, well, this one will be pretty good because, let's just lay it all out here for the people, all the information. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely, man. So you really are the most experienced out of body experiencer that I have run into. Definitely that we've had on the show. And your insights are really unique in regards to what you've experienced on the other side. It's not just like, hey, let's just float to Paris kind of
Mhm.
events. You're at a different level in your exploration of the astral plane. But before we jump into all of that, what was your life like before you started doing out of body experiences, before you started going down the spiritual path?
Well, my whole life from childhood was always spiritual. At a very spiritual upbringing from my uncle, father. Yeah. So as a child, what people would typically say normal was not my normal life. I was being taught at a very young age how to read people's energy field. Uh, Sitting in a room for 3, 4 hours is not that was just a normal thing then to focus. Because focus is the most important thing. Once you focus on something, which is you could say bred out of children, right, to get distracted on other things, right? But
Mhm.
that was always supported through my entire upbringing. So there was never a point where I had like this spiritual awakening because I was always connected to, you could say, the other side from a childhood because it was never shut down or talked about in a way to shut it down. Right. So it's always been happening to me since a childhood. It's always been present the entire time. And that's something that parents, right, should actually be doing because when they do that, it's like the other side is the eternal aspect of us. We always return there. And children, right, when they come in, they are very fresh from the other side.
They're more connected. They're more connected to the other side. I
Yeah.
find it. I found it from my experiences that you're more connected when you come in and when you're about to leave. It's kind of like you start to get a little bit. If you're leaving in a slower process, you start to connect more back to where you came from. And when you come in, that you're pure love. You ever see a child's face and how they interact, or even children, how they interact with each other. Us as humans programming them with all this other crap that they have to deprogram themselves throughout their
Yeah.
life, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah. Because a lot of it, well, once you cross over and you access the other side, you realize the majority of the things here that are taught is not true at all. It's actually not even the nature of reality. It's not how it is on the other side and how it's actually viewed from the other side looking in. So
Mm.
there's a lot of deception from the point of birth where the child's fresh coming in, where it understands things, it's very in tune. And then you have the life span where it's all based on deception and lies. And then you reach the end where people they start actually asking the questions that they should have been asking the entire time. But it's very unfortunate that they have to wait until death to ask those simple questions. Who am I? Where am I? What is this place? You know, to then start actually realizing it because they're on the transitional, they're transitioning out. But through out of body states, right? What you do is you access the other side while you're physically here in physical density, right? It
Mhm.
can be done. It's no different from a near death. It's a near death experience controlled. That's what an out of body state is.
Now, okay, so before we get into that, what can you
Hmm.
explain to people what an OBE is, or an out of body experience is, for people who have not heard it or experienced it?
Okay. Okay. So one, once you do an out of body state, it is not an astral projection or a lucid dream, right? Once you come out of your body, right, it is more physical than the physical body that you have right now. Your soul is physical. It has what you would call density, in terms of feeling things, touching things. You're not just a light orb spinning in space. So once you could learn how to control the shutdown of the body, you lower the magnetic field of the physical body, which keeps the soul within the body, right? When that magnetic field is lowered to a sense, you exit. And once you stand, right, you are actually standing in your soul, and your soul is physical. It's literally no different from a near death experience, because that what you access once you're out of the body is no different from that what you access when you die. You access the records, you access relatives, you access thought forms, time, the events within this realm. You access the very nature of reality in terms of the 12 realms within this construct. I've been shown many different constructs on the other side look like realms stacked on God shells, right? So you access all these things, and all these things come within you, and you start pinpointing things and getting you could say, an understanding again, or memory, because it's really a memory, right? Coming back within you, right? And you start applying things in your physical life and walking the path of accordance of how you would act on the other side, which is in integrity and unconditional love.
Beautiful.
So I
So,
also want to say this as
mhm,
well, right? The reason why I say it's not astral projection or lucid dreaming, right? Because when you come out, you're 100% conscious, right? The consciousness that I'm speaking to you right now on this
mhm,
interview, right,
mhm.
is no different from when I come out, or when you come out of your body. You're 100% conscious. But when you're dreaming, just to get like a percentage, right? When you're dreaming, let's just say 25% of your consciousness is there. This is why things fade in and out. You're not fully there. Lucid astral, you're maybe about 50 to, I don't know, 70% there, just throwing out numbers to give a illustration and stuff. So, but when you are dead or controlled near death, out of body state, you're 100% conscious, 100% aware. So that's
So
sort of the
wait,
difference of what you, yep.
so you said that an out of body experience is a controlled near death experience. So I've spoken
Yes.
to over 100 near death experiencers at this point. Near death experiences seem to be guided, meaning that you're being guided as a soul. A lot of times they don't know what's going on. They don't even know that they've passed on until they're like kind of either a spirit guide or Jesus or Buddha or someone shows up and kind of walks them either through a life review or council of elders or meets their relatives, things like that. How is that different than the out of body controlled out of body experience that you're talking about?
Well, you do meet beings, yeah. So I'm in contact with beings there all the time. Once I come out of my body, reoccurring beings come to me and show me things.
Mhm.
So it's no different there of beings and like what people call guides that you could access, right? So when I'm out, there's, like I said, there's beings that present themselves to me, have taken me many places, like the halls of Amenti, the cathedrals, the records, soul records, right? Have shown me the very nature of this place from the outside, what the construct looks like. So it's no different there, because when people die and they see these beings, right, relatives or guides, it's the same thing, right?
So when did you have, I mean, I'm assuming you didn't come out of the womb having an out of body experience. So when was the first time that you actually
Yeah,
had
yeah.
your first out of body experience? I'm assuming you were looking for it. You were trying to achieve that state and it just didn't happen to you. So how did you do it? And what did it feel like the very, very first time?
Okay, so when I was a child, right, I was entering sleep paralysis, coming out of my body, not realizing that I was coming out of my body. Sometimes accessing certain things within the physical body, bringing it in. You could say here, right?
Mhm,
So I didn't understand what was happening. And because when you're a kid, due to all of the fear things that happen, right? I shut it down as a kid due to fear, right?
mhm.
Fast forward, progressing into around 16 years old is when they started to happen all over again. I popped out, was shown by a being. Her name was Celeste, which showed me, you could say, all things. I didn't know how to interpret it back then until, the hundreds of thousands of out of body experiences that I've had from present date. 2014, when I was in Morocco, is when they started to happen uncontrollably. And they happened to me so much where I begged them to stop at a certain point, because once you come out of your body too frequently, right? there's a frying out effect of the central nervous system. It's no different from a computer, right? When a computer has, let's just say, a terabyte of memory, right? When you're accessing information, let's say if it's 3 terabytes, when you try to download that into the physical vessel, the computer, there could be a frying out effect. Things slow down, bog down. So that was happening to me. And I begged it to stop in Morocco. Didn't stop, only temporarily. And then I just learned how to, over the years, control this into a state where every single night, if I choose to, I can shut down the body, leave it, and access the information that I want to access.
So, Darius, let me ask you this, man. Why you almost seem prodigy-esque when it comes to out-of-body experiences? Like you were kind of put on this earth to do what you're doing. Why do you think you've chosen in your soul contract or in your soul blueprint to experience this, and this gift has been given to you at this high level? Like we all play basketball, but we all can't be Michael Jordan and Kobe. So there's a difference. So I'm looking upon you as the Kobe or Michael Jordan of out of body of experiences. Why has that been gifted to you, and why is this information so important for us to be hearing at this point in human existence?
Okay. So I understand where you're going with that, right? In the physical body sense, I could be Kobe Bryant or whatever, right?
Sure, sure, sure.
But
Yeah.
as the soul, right? Your soul has all the capabilities as my
Mm-hmm,
soul, right? And
mm-hmm.
there's no different at all
Right.
between the abilities and things that we could do and access, right? Now, this out of body state was a very natural thing, especially you go back into the halls of Amenti, accessing the dimensional spaces within this realm and traversing you could say, creation of all things. It's a very natural thing. It's as natural, or was as natural as breathing back then, right? But due to all of the things that have been taking place here, you could say modification of the DNA, the dumbing down of consciousness, right? Trying to disconnect, you could say, your soul from the physical body, your spirit, like your essence, like truly bringing that in. That's why this is so difficult for people, right? But it's a very trainable thing to reactivate it again, because it's just like a atrophied muscle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because when things you're not working on things, it just takes a little bit of time to reactivate that again, and then you're up and running, right? So it's not, you don't need to, this isn't something that you need to sit in a, like, for many years to accomplish, right? That's not true at all, right? That's what they would want you to believe, to make you believe that this is something so hard to achieve that you don't even try, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very accessible. If you're going to sleep every single night, right? It's just learning how to control certain sleep cycles with shutting down the body, staying consciously aware, and you're out every single time. So yeah.
So why did you choose to have this? What part of this is in your spirit or your soul's evolution to go through this lifetime doing this work?
Okay. I don't really, I know that there's been certain things that are pre-planned for souls, right?
Sure.
Certain event markers, right? Now, these event markers are, you could say, major things that what you said, pre-planned, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the only thing that what was explained to me is about the great work, which is waking people up to the other side. Because when they wake up to that, they wake up to everything. So you could say a part of what I'm doing here is just doing that, right? And that was actually explained to me by my uncle, but I don't know specifically why, other than waking people up to the other side, because
Mm-hmm.
it has a catalyst effect of
Mm-hmm.
knocking down all of deceptions and getting people direct access to that which they are, the eternal aspect of themselves, right? So yeah,
That makes,
I
yeah,
hope that
that's
yeah, I hope that answers.
it.
Yeah.
It does answer your question. It's similar to what I am doing in that way.
Mm,
I'm trying to
mm,
awaken people with these conversations and give people access in a large way
yes,
to these conversations, not only in English, but now hopefully in multiple languages around the world. So it's try really to
yes.
expand these ideas as well. So, all right. So I feel you, brother. I feel you at that level that we're both here doing similar things, but in different ways. But it's very similar to like there's so many different,
Well, take it. Sorry to cut you off, but
yeah.
take it like this. It's like
Mm-hmm.
everybody's acting as a tuning fork, right? So
Mm-hmm.
based off the certain level of consciousness of individuals, you're going to act as a certain tuner for a certain level of consciousness. Same with me. Now, I'm not necessarily going to speak to a level of consciousness. Let's just say that's way over here. That's just waking up to the very basic aspects of consciousness or the
Hmm.
soul, right?
Hmm.
That people would be better off going to just the right person at the stage that they're at in the path, and then it sort of just progress, because we are all destined to become the greatest versions of ourselves, right? So that's a preset event that each soul is destined to become the greatest version of themselves. So in the process of getting there, everybody will get there. Everybody wakes up to all things again. Yeah.
Right. It's like you don't start boxing and then your first fight be against Mike Tyson in his prime. Like that's not a thing you should do. You need to work your way up until you get to a place where your skill set is at a place where maybe Mike Tyson can teach you a few things, but you don't just start learning from a master.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm using boxing as an analogy, but a
yeah,
violent
yeah. Oh, okay,
analogy, but an analogy
okay.
nevertheless.
Yeah.
But you see what
I
I'm
used
saying?
to
Does
do
that make sense?
boxing. Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
So does
yes,
that make
yeah,
sense?
yes, yeah.
So when you were on the other side, you said you've met guides. Have you met your spirit guide specifically?
Yeah, so I met many of them. One of them's called Celeste.
Hmm.
Also, I've met my uncle many
Hmm.
times. He's taken me to the halls of Amenti.
Hmm.
There's a few other ones that I don't necessarily that want to share their names specifically, but yeah, one of them has taken me to the cathedrals, which was the heavenly realms. Heaven is actually here, so within
Hmm.
this construct, right? But yeah, so I have guides that I've been in contact with that my first time, you could say my second time here coming out, then seeing them again, didn't remember them. And I was just like, the third time coming, I was like, oh, I remember who you are. And then, because there's a history, right?
Hmm.
So this is where you get soul families or, stuff like that. Yeah.
So let's get
Yes.
into the construct. What is, from your opinion, um, this thing called you call in the construct? Because there is something called simulation theory that quantum physics has put out and proven actually now that there is chances are that we're in some sort of matrix-esque construct. What is your understanding of that?
The construct is what we're in right now, right? So
Hmm.
you could say that's the container, it contains everything. It's actually a toroidal field as well. This is where you
Hmm.
get many different realms stacked upon realms, all coexisting within here. All right. This particular construct has a total of 12 realms, right? So 12 total within here. This is where we have the earthly realms. Realm one, which is the realm that we're in within this construct, is the earthly realms, right? And there are other land masses still here that have not, you could say, has not been presented to us through the official model that we're given, right? So there are
You mean
land
on
beyond the
Earth?
poles. Yeah, yeah,
On Earth,
absolutely.
on Earth. Oh yeah, I'm sure
Yes,
there's
yeah,
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 Antarctica
yeah.
alone.
Yeah. This is where all of the races are. You could say ET races exist, right?
Mm.
Even the you could say a lot of the bodies, the original giant bodies, angel bodies are in stasis in Antarctica is what I saw out of my body. Now, when you go through the many different realms, right? They have different names. These realms have different templates, right? So one of them I'll share here is realm five, which is the heavenly realms. Heaven is within the construct that we are within. It's not actually on the other side. It's within here. It's a certain template within the the. I'll just call it the.
Frequency?
Yeah. Well, the I'll just call this construct the game of duality, right? Let's just call it that. That's the thing. I usually do have images, which I don't know if I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
share at all. Or, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but
We'll put it off lecture. Yeah.
yeah. But realm five is heaven, so this is where you get the realms of heaven, right? So there's different layers within heaven that you get access, right? The records, the cathedrals, right? Some of these places are very pleasurable as well that you can access. When you go up to realm seven, this is where people call the angelics, right? The angels, right? This is where the angels exist within this construct, realm seven, right? And as you go up even more, you access realm nine, which is the realm of, you could say, the rainbow bridge, gods, or another way to call it is what they call Asgard, right? Realm of gods within this construct, right? Realm 12, right, etc. Like there's different templates and different things that you can access outside of the body that are all here, right? And it's just like basically tuning. it's like a radio frequency, right? So as you start to tune the radio frequency, you access different stations. Same thing once you're out of your body. Once you start tuning the soul to different frequencies, you access different realms within this construct. And you access these different realms as well, how I've been showing. There's two ways. One within the halls of Amenti, and also through the core of this realm, right? Which they call the core, the Stargate, which the Stargates give you access to all of the realms within this construct. The 12th realm exits you out of the construct completely, where you could actually step out from the outside, view it from the outside, see it from, you could say, God's point of view. You know?
Now, you've
Yep.
mentioned the okay, so let's go into the 12
Mm-hmm.
realms. Can you kind of
Mm-hmm.
go into a little bit more detail of what each realm is, or at least an explanation of what each realm is? Because I've heard of this concept before of the 12 realms. It's been sometimes said nine, sometimes different numbers, but generally speaking, the multiple levels that we all have to kind of go through. As far as I don't know if it's called ascension. So, like ascended masters who've walked the earth have transitioned into different levels and realms. We can get into that in a minute, but let's just go over the 12 realms as you know them.
Okay. Okay. So the ones that I know and the ones that I feel comfortable sharing right now are the ones that I've already shared, right? Because there's still certain things that I'm mapping out currently of specifics, like the realm of Eden, right?
Hmm.
That's actually a true it's a place, right?
Hmm.
That's here still, right? So yeah, I've just the ones that I've shared are the ones that I feel comfortable with at this moment. But yeah, so you have heaven here, you have the angelic realm, which is angels, right? The
Hmm.
gods, right?
Hmm.
Earthly realm. And there's a total of 12. Now, a good way to understand this is that the construct was designed, basically, you could say this, right? As above, so below, as within, so without, right? So these physical bodies are perfectly mirrored off the construct design, right? So 12 months. It's originally supposed to be 13, right? But let's just stick with 12, right? So 12 months, right? 12 cycles, right? We have what people call the 12 DNA, supposed to be 13, right?
Hmm.
Also, what people call the 12 chakra system, supposed to be 13, right?
Hmm.
So these physical bodies were original blueprint was designed to access these spaces within physical density. But because of all of the distortions at play, right? And you could say the onslaught and the attack on the physical health, these the strands of the DNA, as you would say, is now only two, right? So now we're not actually we don't have the full capabilities of the physical body of what it was designed for, which is accessing the construct, all right, the
Hmm.
full construct. Now, this is why you come out of the body, right? So you come out of the body, the soul's not limited, right? It's not limited by anything. You can't measure the soul. If you measure the soul, then you already put a limitation. It's also one of the unbreakable truths of the universe, which is you can't have ultimate expression of freedom with a limitation, just like you can't have unconditional love with a judgment, right? So at a point in time, right, before the reset, before you could say the crack within the firmament above us, Milky Way, which waters above spilling through here within this realm, the plane that we're on, right? There was a point in time within this realm where you have the giants, you have the angels, heaven was on the earthly plane, right? All of these beings were here, right? Everything was here, right? And due to that, the reset and stuff like that, now things have been, you could say, we're basically living on the destruction of an old world, of an old realm, essentially here. Anyways, this is why you could find all of the records here, the truths. When they dig down, they could bring things up, giant bodies, etc.
Is that what that's what the pyramids, the Sphinx, Göbekli
Mm,
Tepe, all of these things that have been around for longer than the official human timeline, which is supposedly 6, 7, 10,000 years the most,
mm.
where we are more more intelligent than we were 100,000 years ago. But what
Absolutely,
archaeology,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
but archaeology though is stating now that the ancients actually knew more than we did in many other avenues. They might have not had iPhones, but they were more advanced. Hence the pyramids. Hence these things that cannot be
Well,
explained. So please go down.
yes. Yeah. Well, all of the technology that's here right now,
Hmm.
right, that we create, is a, you could say, a very dumbed down version of that which we are naturally capable of, right? So organic technology exists within us, right? And this could be activated. This is where you get Project Looking Glass. Project Looking Glass is a piece of technology from, you could say, the government to access potential time events. Now, you could do this naturally by coming out of the body, right? When you come out of the body, you can access potential time. All exists here within the physical body. Your soul has access to it all, right? So all these telepathic communication through text message, or you could say text messages, communication telepathically. We have
Mm-hmm.
the ability to do that, all right, through our natural intuition. It happens naturally to people, but they just write it off because it's a little small thing. But the more that you start to get in tune and start practicing these things, the more those abilities start to awaken and heighten. All right. So back in the time of you know Egypt, right? These pyramids are a lot larger, right? Most of them, we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg of the pyramids because they go a lot deeper. This is where you access the halls. But they knew this and they were actually doing this. They were able to, right, actually take their consciousness, their soul at that time, transfer it out through the tables that they have there, right, which was projecting frequency, right, through the body, right? And they were able to take the soul out of the body and transport it into another body. Yeah, and this is
Mm-hmm.
where they also have the living gold. Living gold is within the bodies back then, anyways, right? The blood was living gold, not the blood that we have now.
So this is fascinating. So the concept of Atlantis, the concept
Mm.
of Lemuria, these ideas, these stories. What is your understanding of those places, those
All,
events?
yeah, all existed here. Yeah. So Atlantis and
Hmm.
Egypt were of the same. This is the same time frame. People think that there are different time frames, but this is the same time frame, right? Egypt wasn't a desert like it is now. This was very lush. There was
Hmm.
water all over the place. All right. This is part of the technology that they had then, like using the understanding how the construct is, how this realm operates, how the celestial, right, how we are the center of it all, right? And they mapped out everything here. And they use that in the way in terms of modeling their structures based off the very nature of this place and how it works, free energy, right? And they were able to use that, right? And also use that through the physical body as well,
It almost
unlocking
sound
their full capabilities. Mm.
it almost sounds like you're talking about Neo in the Matrix. He had understood the code of the Matrix and started to be able to manipulate and move within it
Mm.
in a godlike fashion, but only looked godlike compared to what everybody else is kind of dumbed down, as you said, or stunted abilities. Everybody could be
Mm.
Neo. Everyone could be Jesus. Everyone could be Buddha. But they just happen to break free and get access to understanding within themselves how the whole system works. And that's why it looks godlike when they did certain things. Let's use Neo as an example,
Yeah.
where it would be the equivalent of us going back to the 1900s with an iPhone. We would look like gods with a
Mm.
machine gun 200 years ago. We would look like
Mm.
absolute gods. But really, it was just a different understanding of how certain things worked. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, so the more you understand the very nature of this place, the very construct, the realm, and the other side, right? You're going to say someone that doesn't know that it's going to be perceived to them as godlike, but they have the same capabilities and the same abilities, and they could do exactly what you are doing and everybody else is doing, and even more so. Yeah. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not limited to just one thing. It's just once you have souls that are asleep here, right? Like many souls are still asleep. They're in a amnesia, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, when a soul is awake, you could say that one soul carries an allegiance of souls with them, right? Because they're awake, their eyes are fully open, right? Now, versus someone that's asleep, still sleeping in the bed. If you go ask that person, "Can you do this?" If at best they're going to be sleepwalking while trying to perform the task, versus a person that's awake, seeing everything for what it is going to be able to navigate certain spaces and do certain things much more effectively. But it's just a natural thing. They're just sleeping, right? You could say, how do you tell a blind person what the color blue looks like? Right? Can't necessarily do it. It's not because they'll be blind forever. They will eventually get their sight back again, right? But it takes some level of willingness for that soul to step forward. And this is part of a lot of the agendas in the New Age community, and also what people call love and light and stuff like that, is to make them in a way, convince them in a way, and lead them down a path of sitting down submissively, passively, right? Thinking that somehow being awake and aware and enlightened, or the truth of things, is somehow you become more, get rid of your ego, become more submissive, sit back and do nothing, when it's a very active role. The more you awake, sometimes the more angry you get, because you see things for what they really are, all
Hmm.
playing out here. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no, I
So,
agree. I
yeah.
agree with you 100%. There's things that I see that I'm like, it doesn't even make sense to me anymore. The violence that's going on overseas right now, or, you know, control over people or media, or you just, before you wouldn't even think twice about it. But all of a sudden you start seeing, it's kind of like that old movie, They Live. If you remember that movie
Yeah.
with,
Yeah. Yeah.
with John
Yeah.
Carpenter's They Live with Roddy Piper,
Yes.
when he put
Yes.
the glasses on, he
Mhm.
could see the truth of everything and how that
Yes.
everybody was being manipulated.
Yes.
But when he took the glasses off, he was back into the construct that was being built for them. So it's very similar. And he got angry. Oh, he got very angry when he
Yeah.
figured it out and wearing these glasses. And he was trying to wake everybody up. I'm like, put these glasses on, put these glasses on, put these glasses on. So it's
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
analogy for what we're talking about, really.
Yeah, even unconditional love is misunderstood, right? Love, the true frequency of love. When people think of love, they think of, and although this is, there's truth to it as well, but they purely think of love and unconditional love as a very passive thing. Sit back, allow, right? When love is it's the very energy and the force that creates all things. And they perverted it and twisted it in such a way that now people are using love in a way of, in a place of non-creation, right? It love is a weapon just as much as it is creation itself, because love could pierce through a mountain and pierce through all barriers if applied correctly, right? It's no different from a mother giving birth to a child, right? So she loves this child unconditionally. Now watch what happens due to unconditional love. If that child's put in any harm, that mother will pierce through all barriers, right? Everything that's placed in front of that mother, due to the unconditional love for the child, to protect the child, right? So when you start applying love in the correct way, in terms of not in this overly passive state, and you start directing it, right? That is a very powerful force, right? And it's love, unconditional love, right? You can't have unconditional love with a judgment. And this also applies to this as well. People that are judging, right? So when people judge other people, they literally step out of unconditional love, and they become no different from the very evil that they judge, right? This is where you'll hear me say sometimes, I don't necessarily work for the light, but I don't work for the dark either, because the light and the dark both have judgments on one another, and you'll begin to quickly see the foundation of that. They're actually no different, right?
Mm,
So,
mm. I love what you said in regards to active and passive, because so many people do have the image of the yogi sitting in a cave in the Himalayas for 40 years meditating to find enlightenment. And
mm,
that was at a certain time in history made sense, because humanity wasn't even capable of understanding, as history has proven. Jesus, not very well received uh, during his lifetime. And so was Buddha and all of these great spiritual teachers. At that time, that made sense. But into today's world, it's different. You have to actively be working and doing things to change society with this knowledge that you are gaining, whether through meditation, whether through your own
mm.
spiritual practices. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very active thing, and it's disheartening to watch, especially when you have a lot of the teachings now that are get rid of things that is an expression of the soul, right? Right.
Can you give an
Like
example of that?
okay. So when people say, get rid of your, let's just say, get rid of your ego, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. What people will realize once they leave the body or they die, that their thought process, who they are at this very moment, does not change. Everything comes with you. What you think right now, your emotions, what you feel, all come with you and is all presented, or it all comes with you on the other side. The only thing that changes is that you start to get memories of your experiences. All those start to come within your soul again. And you start getting clarity on why you act the way you act, why you do things the way you do things, and why you could say have done certain things within this realm in forgetfulness, right? Right now, each soul is, you could say, the highest version of themselves acting in forgetfulness here within this realm, right? Because they
Mm-hmm.
forget who they are. Right. So all these things are aspects of you, your personality. Get rid of your ego. Never get rid of those. Those are expressions of your soul, right? It's an aspect of you. And it's basically like saying it's a spiritual warfare on the soul once you start doing that. Because you're trying to diminish the expression of a soul, and you cannot have ultimate expression of freedom with a limitation. So they're already trying to put limitations on the soul's expression.
It makes perfect sense. You said something that just echoed in my head. It's like
Mm.
everyone is capable of doing the things we're talking about and greater. And these
Yes.
exact words, if I may quote Jesus Christ, he said the exact same thing. You could do everything I could do and even more. Are these masters who walk the planet, can you explain to people what was actually happening to them? The Babajis, the Buddha, all these masters who walk the earth, what were they doing? What were they accessing within themselves that gave them the glasses that from they live or the abilities of Neo? Because a lot of the stuff, I mean, Jesus's, miracles sound very yogic in nature. So like the masters of the yogis, levitation, biolocation,
Mm.
a lot of things that are talked about in the spiritual text. What are they doing and what have they accessed within themselves to give them these kind of understandings?
Okay, so I'm not necessarily, I'm not read up on those, on things like that, like the masters and stuff like that. But what I can tell you is this, based off experience, my
Mm-hmm.
experience is once you start accessing information and you start seeing these things, whether if that's through, you know, because if they're doing meditation and then they're leaving the body, I would say they're leaving the body to access all the information, right? So once you access this stuff, like you see it, right? And you have no choice but to grow from it, right? You can't, once you open up the door and you walk through it, you can't necessarily walk back. It's a door that you can no longer, you know,
Can't
go
forget it.
back. Listen,
Yeah.
yeah, you can't forget it. I mean, you could try, but it's very painful, right? Because you know the truth, right? So I would just say these people that you're bringing up, right,
Mm.
have just saw truth for what it is and started applying it in the physical sense to the best of their ability, and also teaching people that they have the same capability. A lot of people very quickly turn into a place of worship something outside of themselves, worship somebody, constantly giving their power away because this is what they've been indoctrinated and trained to do, right? To give their power away constantly through education systems, through work. Everything within this realm is pre-set up to make somebody give their abilities away, right? So when you worship something, automatically you have forgotten at the basic level that you are no different from that soul and have the same capabilities and capacity of that soul if you apply, right? Because it's a very active thing. So yeah, yeah. I mean, that's,
That
I hope that
that makes
answers that.
makes
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
answers
yeah,
that question beautifully.
yeah.
Now you've mentioned the halls of Amenti a few times. What the heck is the halls of Amenti? Is it like the halls of the Akashic records? Can you explain to us what that is?
Okay, so the halls of Amenti are like when I talk about the halls of Amenti or the heavenly records, the cathedrals. These are just records you could say like a universal record database. It's like a in other terms, it's like a hard drive, right? That
The
contains
cloud,
all of the
the cloud.
yeah, yeah, the cloud contains all the history of what has taken place through the realm through that time period as well. Now, when
Mhm.
I access the halls of Amenti, it's just that it's accessing a certain point in time while at the same time it's accessing the present because the halls of Amenti are still a present thing that still exists. All exists here, which could be accessed, you see. So there still are beings there in the present time that are still, there, right? But they hold an entire database of records within the Egyptian and Atlantis time event, right? So
Mhm.
that time in particular. And what's interesting is when you access certain things within the halls of Amenti, or even the heavenly realms as well, but I'll just stick with the halls of Amenti. They have like these tablets, or like you could say books, right? Or certain crystals, right? When I was in the halls of Amenti, I remember seeing the first time there was a crystal there, and that crystal had a white fringe around it, right? And once you walk in into the door, the passageway, all the doors are open, by the way, but once you walk in there, this crystal would change based off the frequency of the soul. Mine was green, right? And so when each soul walks into that door, it will change, right? Based off the certain energy signature frequency that the soul's bringing at the time. There's also certain doors and passageways that you can access where when you touch something, it sort of downloads all the information within you. But it's not necessarily like you get every single nuance of it. It's almost like it's like a you're getting the movie trailers. It's the trailer of the movie. You're getting all
Mhm.
the good bits, and then over time, that slowly unpacks within you, and then you're like, okay, that makes more sense, etc., etc. Right? Also, in the halls of Menta, they mapped out when you go down to the all the way down the middle hall to the very end of it. They've mapped out the entire construct, all the 12 stargates, right? The entire realm that we live within, the 12 realms, 12 stargates, and they have it on like a table. And like they actually, the firmament, everything is there. And they have it all displayed. And in the halls of Amenti, there's certain halls as well that access due to frequency, right? So there's certain frequencies based off the stargates that they have aligned to within certain halls that you walk into, which gives you direct access to the many different realms within this construct. Because stars are based off certain frequency points, fixed dimensional space access points. Yeah.
So can you go into what
Yep.
you see with the cathedrals and what information is there versus the halls of Amenti?
So it's all of the records of heaven, right? The point in time of, or the records of heaven and present as well, because heaven is still here, right?
Mhm.
But what was interesting when I was in the heavenly realms, right, is what we call iPhones, right? Or like iPads, tablets.
Mhm.
Like they actually have these devices within heaven. And it's just that it's another database, you could say. It's a form of organic technology. I remember seeing a girl holding this device that looked like a iPhone. And I was just like, why does she have a phone?
Well, I
Like
mean,
why is
I
she
can
using a
answer.
phone?
I can answer
Yeah,
that
yeah,
question.
yeah. Good, good,
Steve
good.
Jobs is on the other side now, so he's obviously manufacturing these in heaven. Obviously, he's now on the other side, and even God was like, "I got it. These are fantastic."
Yeah, yeah,
That's the only thing I could think of.
yeah. So that's a good one. But the yeah, they have organic forms of technology, right?
Mhm.
So that's what they use within the heavenly realms is what I've seen, like these tablets, these phone, but they're not phones, but they look very similar, right? And it's the same thing when you touch it, and it gives you access to an entire database of information of that what you want to access within the heavenly realms, right?
Well,
Even when I was there as well, yeah, go ahead.
well, no, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead.
Yeah, even when I was there as well, like the cathedrals, right? When people think that somehow once you are on the other side and accessing these spaces, that you don't have pleasure. Pleasure exists on the other side. It's all the pleasures of physicality with no limitations. So
Mhm.
inside of the cathedrals, right? There's actually you could delight in your soul and its pleasures, right? Touching other souls, contact, all of it's there. Right.
And when you were talking about technologies, I've heard so many near-death experiencers talk about the life review, where all their life, all their life is laid out in this kind of like Minority Report style floating screens that you can kind of like go into, and then there's also a feeling of you feel everything on both sides. You feel what you did to somebody else and what somebody else did to you, and that technology sounds very in line with what you're talking about, this organic technology. And we use that for lack of a
Yeah.
better word.
Yeah. Yeah. So like life reviews, stuff like that, all exists. Like that happens, right? I remember being shown a small part of a life review, right? And I'll actually take this in two different ways, so
Mhm.
give you context.
Please.
But I remember seeing a life review with my uncle. He gave me a small part of it when I was coming out. This is a time where I was trying to access my uncle Bob that passed away, deceased relative, right? And I was there, and then he was showing me certain things that I was doing here that was withholding love, right?
Mm.
And when he showed me that, it wasn't necessarily that he was judging me, right? Because he we are the judges of ourselves. So you're not being
Mhm.
judged for the things that you do on the other side. You judge yourself, right? The unforgivable sin is the sin that you can't forgive yourself for. So he was showing me very small things that I was holding back with love. And that brought me to my knees in pain, absolute pain, right? Because I realized who I was on the other side, who we all are, right? Because everybody realizes who they are and the divinity of each soul and
Right.
all of the memories, right? And it's painful. So the love that you withhold here is the pain that you are going to carry temporarily, anyways, on the other side. It's not for eternal or anything like that, but you do feel emotion, right? Now, when you are accessing life reviews as well, right? It's like it's almost like a virtual reality, like you're in it, like you're physically in that experience as it's playing out. You could move all around it, you could view it almost like accessing, well, it's just like accessing the records, right? When you're accessing certain records, you're actually in that time event that has taken place and you could view it from all different angles. You could walk, you could view it from that person's perspective, your perspective. So yeah, the life review thing is it's true. Yes.
The idea of parallel realities
Mm-hmm.
and the multiverse, which I'm not sure if they're the same or two different ideas, but that every time we make a choice, a major choice, not catch up or no catch up, but major choices, it splits off into another reality while this one continues to see how that plays out, because that is something I've also heard in life reviews where they're like, oh, I wonder if I would have married Sally. Oh, well, hold on. Here you go. This is how it would have worked out if you would have married Sally instead of breaking up with her in high school. And that went down the road, and you're like, oh God, thank God that didn't happen, or something along those lines.
Yeah,
From your experience, tell me what it is.
that would be giving you a potential, right?
Right,
So there are,
right.
yeah. So there are potential time events here, right? So potential time, all that you could say, all the potentialities, right, are there, right? Now there are fixed event markers within this realm, right? And so this is going to be like I'm going down this way, but then answering the question here, I just want to give clarity. So there's preset event markers within this realm. One of the ones that are right in front of your face is that eventually every single soul will wake up to the other side and access all things again, right? Through death, through dying. They cross over, the body dies, right? But you don't need to die. You could have a controlled out of body state to access that information. Now, there are many different, you could say, soul contract major event markers.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So as you're living your life, if this is the event marker right here, there could be thousands of different paths that you could take. It doesn't matter which one you take, but you when that event marker is here, those paths will eventually converge and hit that final destination, right? Whether if that's meeting a loved one or it's something major. Now it's not all scripted, right? Not all things are scripted. Like the different paths are not scripted, but there are preset things. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Now, once you are, let's just say, making a choice in life, right? So your choice is to get on the bus or don't get on the bus, right? So you get on the bus, then you take the potentiality of that time, you're actually living it in that time event. Now, the potential of not getting on the bus, that will only go so far. It's not an infinite see the entire life of that soul for the death, right? It's just it gives you a you could say 10% of the potentiality of what could have occurred if you did not get on the bus, right? And then the
Mm-hmm.
rest, it just turns fuzzy at that point. So, yeah.
So it's when you, and I want people to be very clear about this. When you say markers, mile
Mhm.
markers, for lack of a better word, these are
Yeah.
big events in your life. So like meeting your the loved one that you're going to spend the rest of your life with, let's say, or at least
Mhm.
this next chapter of your life with.
yeah,
having children, not having children, getting this job that then spawns you off into a career, a car accident, a windfall of some sort, maybe financial, maybe spiritual windfall. Who knows? These are big markers that are laid out for you, as and not laid out for you, that you've laid out. From my understanding, you've laid out yourself for the evolution of your soul in this lifetime. How you get between markers is open potentiality, where you can
exactly.
make a long left turn, you can go straight, you can go date Jenny, date Sally,
Yes.
date Bob,
Yeah. Yeah.
however you
Yeah.
want to get down that road, you'll get, but eventually you're going to get to that mile marker. That's
Yeah.
basically
Yeah.
an
Yeah.
explanation.
Yes, yeah. It goes back into what I was saying before. Like each soul is destined to become the greatest version of themselves. So when they set certain things, right? Not all souls set certain things either, right? Some souls do, like they have like a plan. This is where like even you'll hear certain people, parents, where the child comes in, right? To the parent,
Yeah.
and they say, "Oh yeah, I chose you. I'm happy I chose you this time." Right? Because certain things are set. So let's just say the preset one was meeting Mary, the love of your life, right? So what you just said, the path of getting there, not preset, but eventually converging and meeting that person, right? Let's just say on the sidewalk or something, was a preset event for that to converge at some point, right? Now, what happens after that, it's not necessarily preset because that's the paths that you could take, right? So it's just the major event markers, right? That are preset of what I've been shown. Yeah.
Now, is the multiverse something different than parallel realities, or are they both kind of the same concept from your point of view?
So so the so the nature of reality, like I said, so you have constructs on the other side, which are you could say games, right? They're
Mm-hmm.
different versions of console like Xbox or PlayStation or Nintendo, right? And then the realms are basically like the different versions of the game, like, let's just say Call of Duty 1, Call of Duty 2, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Now there are dimensional spaces as well. These dimensional spaces are thought forms, right? Thought forms that you project, you create with the will of the soul, the spoken word. You project, you create dimensional spaces through your thoughts that you could experience what you want as well. So it's that's how it was shown to me anyways. So when it comes to time, potentialities, which we covered, in the multiverse, right? It's not necessarily you could call it the multiverse, yeah, but it's just that's the way that I've been shown anyways. Constructs around dimensional spaces once you're on the other side. So
Now, I heard
yeah.
that in other interviews you've done, you've talked about the construct ending, that this
Mhm.
is how this whole thing is going to kind of finish.
Yeah.
Can you explain that to my audience?
Okay. So that's what I was shown at 16 years old by being called Celeste. And at 16 years old, I was shown you could say, completion of this realm, right? And how it was a big celebration. And that completion was basically all things reopening up again to all souls remembering all things again, the great event, right? Now, when I speak about that, I'm very hesitant anymore to speak about it because I don't necessarily want to turn into putting people's hope harvesting, anything like that. But that's what I was shown from the age of 16 of the
Mm,
completion of this entirety of this construct, because everything that could have been experienced has been experienced here from some soul, right? This is where you get the looping history always repeats itself, right? Because we've played so many different versions within this construct, within these realms, and they're all just, we played out all the roles, all the scripts, right? And it's just repeat, repeat, repeat. Now, when it comes to an end of what I was showing, right, it's not necessarily an end because all of the information here is stored within the records of all things, right?
mm.
But like, I need to be careful with that because then, it's
I
people
understand
start
it turns into,
asking,
yeah, they turn
yeah,
into fear mongering, or
exactly. Yeah.
they lead into fear and things like that, which
Yeah. Yeah.
which is not what we're trying to promote at all.
Yeah.
But that does also make sense, because if you've studied if you've studied some of the Vedic texts, that there is these 26,000 year cycles
Yes.
where
Yeah.
you start hot, you start evolved, then you
Mm.
start to go down, down, down till you get to the dark ages, and then you come back up, and we're in this stage right now of being awakened again. We're going back up. But then
Mm-hmm.
there's people who are saying this is the last cycle. And by the way, last cycle could be
Yeah,
another
yeah.
20,000 years, another,
Mm.
whatever, how many thousand years it is. Go ahead. You were going to say.
Yeah, so basically that's what I was saying. So the cycle's repeating, right? So we
Mm-hmm.
repeated these cycles over and over and over.
Mm-hmm.
We repeated them so many times. So what I was showing is that the cycles in terms of what you're talking about of repeating no longer repeats. Like it just comes to, I don't know how it actually looks. I just know what I was showing is that these cycles, these, the golden age and then back into the dark ages and the golden age, they stop. And then we all go back to the eternal aspect of our soul. Again, you could say
Mm-hmm.
on the other side, we're not bound by the cycles anymore, right? Because this was just this. You see what I mean?
I do. I
Yeah.
understand what you're saying. Which
Okay.
brings me to
Okay.
another idea of, and again, I've heard this concept before, and I've asked this question a bunch from people because I love to hear their point of view on it, and I'd love to hear your point of view on it. I've been shown and been told about the concept of no, there is no past lives, there is no future lives. All lives are happening at the same time. All timelines are happening at the same time. And we just are focused on this point of view. And if we do something in this life, it ripples quote unquote back or it ripples forward. So there's lessons like if you learned a lesson in this one that you, because of free will, like, oh, he wasn't even supposed to learn that until three lives down, but he learned it in this one. So now we can erase it from the next three lives from now, kind of idea.
Mm.
So this plays with time and space a little bit. I'd love to hear your perspective on this idea, this concept.
Well, nothing is erased. Nothing is
Right.
truly ever lost or erased.
Right.
Now, it's you're not necessarily yes, all things are happening right now, like your past lives, like your past experiences
Mm-hmm.
are they exist, but they don't exist in terms of that you're experiencing them right now. You could, as a soul, go back into that experience in terms of viewing it, right? As a virtual reality. So that it's true in a sense that all things are playing out, right? Past, present, future, potentialities. This is where I was also shown time as well. But it's your soul right now experiencing this is on the this is what you're experiencing. But when you want to access past lives, past memories, it's just that you're popping into a memory that you could view, almost like a life review. If that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. So it's almost like
Yeah.
you have all, and this is for the older people listening. All your lives are DVDs on a shelf, and you can go in and
There you
go,
go.
oh,
There you
oh, this is the medieval times. This is when I was a Viking. This is when I was with the Aztecs. This is when I was the Egyptians. I did a bunch of Egyptians. Okay, I really like that time period. And play, and you just put it in,
go.
press play. Sorry for all the young ones listening. Look up, Google what a DVD is. But, but is that kind of the idea of that?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it as well. Yeah, for another way for people to understand it. Yeah. Yeah.
So, what is your understanding of? Because it's hard for our hardware, our brain,
Mm.
to understand it from this point of view, time and space, because time is relative. I mean, again, and I've talked to a couple quantum physicists, but that there is a way to actually mark time based on the original Big Bang, all of that kind of stuff. But from my layman's understanding, is like time is based
If the
around our
Big Bang,
rotations. If the Big Bang actually happened exactly the way
no,
it's
no, it
been
didn't.
laid out, yeah, I understand, I
Yeah.
understand. But if if the sun our revolutions around the sun dictate our time. If we were on Jupiter, it'd be a completely different time frame. If we were on Mars, it'd be a different time frame. They rotate differently, so our time would be different. But it's all based around a rotation around of the sun. If we're out 5,000 light years away and there is no sun, is there time? That's the question. So, what is your understanding of time and space from the other side?
Well, I'm going to be very careful here because a lot of the um worldview, space, sun is not actually how it is. We are within a construct firmament plane, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
All we are the center of all things. All is
mm-hmm,
contained within the firmament above. All spins. All is. revolving around us, right? Social alignment, something like that. So just to, you know, but time, how it was presented to me, right, is all is happening, right? How they view it from the other side, all potentiality, all is happening, right? You could say it's the time dimension, right? Time is not just a linear thing, right? You could access just by coming out of your body, right? You could access what you've done in the past, present, and potential future. But how it was shown to me is sort of an illustration. Is a female being came to me. She laid out a deck of cards, right? And I've explained this in many other interviews, but it's a good illustration. She laid out a deck of cards and she just put them straight on the table. And she said, "You experience time in this way. This event, this card to this card to this card, all event markers, all very linear." And she put the cards together. She looked down. We looked down through the center, and all time was happening all at once, right? So
That
that's how they
idea.
could, yeah,
Yeah.
that's how they could access it, or that's how they view it and access it as well through past, present potentials, right? So this is also why a lot of fear-based narrative things that are playing out at the moment, how people are constantly on fear, fear, fear. The more souls focus on something, the more they create the potentiality of that potential time event to take place. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is why fear is very unnecessary because there's nothing to fear, right? But it's greatest illusion is fear, right? It's the number one way to control the soul and have dominion over the soul is fear. If you put fear, make a soul fearful, then you have control over that soul's expression.
That's that's a very interesting way of looking at it because you just said basically what I kind of presented before that all things are happening
Mm,
at the same time. So it's just
mm.
all about perspective, essentially, of how you're
Yeah, yeah,
accessing the information.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
because even in a computer hard drive is not linear. It's all over the place. So you can pick
yeah.
information from here, information here, information from here. So it's not all just A to Z kind of information.
Mm.
Okay. So then
Yeah,
have you
that makes sense. Makes sense.
it,
But
it makes
based
it
off what,
makes
yeah,
yeah, it makes
yeah,
all the sense in the world. Now, you
yeah.
also just said something that was interesting that you when you go out of body, you see past events. So you access past lives in your out of body experience and potential future lives.
No, not future lives. No, no. Like it's like I said before, I was just in the beginning or the middle of this where I said potentials, you only see a 10%. I was just throwing out a number just to give like
Sure,
a
sure. Sure, sure.
context, but it's not necessarily like I, I'm not accessing, and it's not necessarily, I don't even think it's possible to access the your future lives, right? Because it's not necessarily preset. Those things aren't preset in
Yeah.
terms of future lives, you know. But I have seen past lives, past experiences that I've had within this construct, right? So I have Halls of Amenti was one of them. Time of Egypt and Atlantis. I remember that.
Hmm.
I remember the Great War that took place here, which was also part of all beings were involved in that. I remember that one as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, yeah.
Okay. Now, have you been able to see or have given access beyond the construct?
Yeah. That's why I said in the beginning, I was showing outside of the construct completely. So the 12th Stargate within this construct, right, which is part of the 12th realm, when you enter that Stargate, you pop out completely and you actually view it from God's perspective, you could say. Like you could see all of the main construct, this one, but you could see all of the many constructs stacked on God's shelves, right? So they're
So,
just all on display. Like some of them look like open water, like you know, like puddles on the floor that you walk into to have an experience, right? This place in particular, right, is the only place where incarnation exists, where you have to be birthed and then die to exit. Because once you are on the other side, you're in your soul, the perfected version of yourself, which never dies. So when you have an experience, you pop in. Once you're done, you pop right out. There's no death process in that, right? In particular, with this realm too, right? Memory that has come to me through viewing it from the other side as well. Is when you come into this realm, you come into this realm through water. This is why when you stand in water, right? On the other side, your memories start to bleed through the realm. This is why water contains all information, right? And this is also proven as well. If you say certain words to water, if you freeze it, it will start to take the picture of that which you spoke, right? Because all the information exists within the water here, right? So yeah.
Got
That's
it.
just
Okay.
diverging to another. But
Yeah,
anyways, I hope it.
another a
Yeah,
whole other
yeah, yeah.
world, other
Yes,
deep
yes,
conversations. So these other
yes.
constructs that you were seeing, first of all,
Hmm.
what is the environment that you're in? Are you in a dark void with literally like things on a shelf kind of vibe, or is it just kind of like they're kind of everywhere in this dark void, or is it light? What does it look like being outside of this construct?
Well, what I was the place that I was in when I was outside of the construct had like you had it's like this golden. I have an image that I share all the time to show people, but it's hard to explain without actually seeing it.
Mhm.
But I don't know if you want me to bring that up at all.
If you could, if you have it right now, can you bring it
Yeah,
up?
I have it right now. I'll just share
If
this
you
one
just yeah,
image.
yeah, share this image. I'd love to hear. I'd like to see what it looks like.
So
And
yeah, so this is the image to best illustrate when you're outside of the construct of what it looks like, what I was showing when you're outside of this particular construct that contains 12 realms. Now, as you see here, right, you see where the individuals are standing, right? Like they're
mhm,
standing, viewing the construct from the outside. That's what it's like. The souls are massive, right? And the puddles on the floor, things like that, are all different constructs. It's just, I just said constructs stacked on God's shelves, but this is the best image that I could share to illustrate that which what I was showing. Now, what exists outside of all of this, you could say this space is the void, the black space, right? And the
mhm.
void, the black space is you could say the beginning of all things, if there ever was a beginning, but it's the point where all things are created from. So when individuals think that light is first, right? Light is always secondary because light is birthed from the black space, right? Even when you go into religious texts as well, God
Mhm.
created the firmament, created this earthly realm experience, right? He said, let there be light. Light was secondary. Even when you close your eyes right now, you're inside the void. And when you start to imagine something, you birth the light in creation, birth the light into creation, right? So light is always secondary from the void from the beginning, right? Which is, and then you access here, which is all of the different, you could say, constructs, realms,
Mhm.
spaces
Mhm.
for the soul to delight in its senses and experiences, right?
Beautiful.
I'll just stop sharing that. Yeah.
That was very illustrative. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thanks for sharing that with us, Darius. Now I
Yeah.
have a feeling that you and I could talk for at least another 5 or 6 hours. So we will probably definitely have you back to dive in deeper into a lot of these ideas. But before I go,
Yes.
um, I'd love to ask you a few questions I ask all of my guests. What is your definition of living a fulfilled life?
Walking your path, right? Doing what you truly desire, walking your soul's expression, but in integrity and love, right? So when you start walking in integrity and love, while at the same time fulfilling what you know to be true within yourself, that's when you could say you have more spirit or soul within the physical body. This is where you live longer, right? The body doesn't
Mm.
age as quickly. It's no different from a house, right? So when somebody has a house, if the house is empty, that house deteriorates pretty quickly. Same thing applies to the physical body. Once you're not walking your path, your soul's path in integrity and love, it's basically like taking the soul out of the body, and the body's just a empty house, and this deteriorates the physical body very quickly. Does that make sense?
It makes beautiful sense, actually. And
Yeah.
it's another reason why then we become more open to diseases, cancers,
Yes.
things
Yeah.
like that. Because if you are on path and vibrating at a very high level on your path with love
Yes.
and purpose, it's almost impossible for that kind of lower energy or frequency to enter your body.
Mm. Yeah, yeah,
Correct?
yeah. It's yeah, absolutely. So as long as you're walking that path, then things will start to be sustained within the physical vessel, and also you being
Mm.
fulfilled in your life. As soon as you step out of those things, you'll start to see a catalyst of things taking place that actually creates disease, illnesses, etc., and depression, sadness. Yeah.
I'm not sure if you know this or not, but when Paramahansa Yogananda, the great yogi master, died, he did not decompose. For 5 days before his burial, he was warm to the touch. All documented stuff, and you just see, and you saw the video of him like going in his funeral, and you're like, this guy's been dead for 5 days. Like it was
Mm.
not, they never embalmed him, nothing like that, and it was his frequency was so high, and his path was so that it just he transcended the physical, uh, the body just transcended what everybody else goes through. Kind of, it's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. 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 I mean, that's pretty much what causes rapid aging. Like you take an individual that is not connected to its true path or the soul, right? That person
Mm-hmm.
is going to become very weak, very sick, very ill very quickly. A lot of the diseases that exist within the body aren't actually because of the physical attributes of the body. It's typically from the energetic side of things, blocks, right, that are being expressed as above, so below, right? So your soul,
Mm-hmm.
let's just say that's the above. If you're out of if you're out of um, harmony or balance, it creates disharmony, disease, and it creates a catalyst effect through the physical body as well. This is why there's such an attack on the physical body health as well. So yeah,
So, so if you had a chance to go back in time and talk to little Darius, what advice would you give him?
keep walking your path. Don't be distracted by other things. Yeah,
Fair
because
enough.
things tend to pull your strings into other directions, and yeah,
Well, there's a lot of
that's what I would
there's a
say.
lot of shiny light syndrome in this earth.
Yeah,
A
yeah, yeah, yeah.
lot of
A
shiny
lot of
light
things you
syndrome.
could. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
How do you define God or source energy?
Okay, so God is basically the soul. So people say that we are created in God's image. It's more like you we are created in the image of the soul, right? So each soul is God's, you could say, right? We all hold the same essence, the same infinite, we're infinite beings, right?
Mm-hmm,
So
mm-hmm,
it's this is more of like a question too that people can ask themselves: does consciousness dictate the universe, or does the universe dictate consciousness? When people believe that the universe dictates consciousness, they believe in the Big Bang theory. There's a possible afterlife, an eternal aspect, and it's all, you know,
mm-hmm.
etc. When you understand the truth that your consciousness is the dictator of the universe, and you understand that you are the dictator of the universe, you live on forever, your will of your soul manifests reality. And therefore, you have ultimate expression of freedom with no limitation.
What is love?
Love is essentially when in terms of unconditional love for another soul, right? It's honoring that soul's expression because each of us have the we all have an eternal aspect to us. And so honoring each soul for their soul's expression, that's love. That's unconditional love, and not judging that soul for its expression of self. Because as soon as you judge that soul for its expression of self, you become no different from the very evil, as like I've stated already, that you judge. You actually step out of the frequency that creates all things, which is love. So love is just standing in integrity, non-judgment, and honor for that soul to express that which it chooses to express and be.
And what is the ultimate purpose of life?
Experience. Can't have experience without existence, existence without experience.
And where can people find out more about you and the amazing work you're doing in the world?
Yeah, so everything that I do could be found on my website, dariusjwright.com. So that's where I do all my work, hold workshops, and teach people what I'm doing. So
And do you have any parting
yeah,
messages for the audience?
do not allow yourself to be weakened by fear. All right. Do not allow
Mm-hmm.
yourself to get trapped into the narratives of fear. Because as soon as you step into that, right, you start to actually give your power away and you allow other souls to have dominion over your soul, right? A lot of people have been away from home far too long. And this is why they fear, right? Because they have forgotten the true nature of who they are. All right. And when you understand the true nature of who you are, you'll quickly realize that nothing could touch or entrap you, the soul, unless you believe it to be so.
Darius, it has been a pleasure talking to you, my friend. Thank you so much for such an enlightening and fascinating conversation. I appreciate you and what you're trying to do to wake up the world, my friend. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching. Click on one of the videos below to continue your journey, and don't forget to subscribe.